Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Virtual Ninja Show. My name is Javier Soriano, and today we're going to be talking about UEBA. That being said, a few months ago, we did another episode about UEBA. So if you want to know everything about it, go watch that episode. Today, we're going to be focusing on behaviors, the behaviors layer that we have introduced recently. And for that, we don't have one, we have two of our folks from the product group to talk to us about it. Please, Michal, please, Dror, welcome and introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Javier. And it's great to be here and great to be here with you again. My name is Michal Shechter, and I am the lead product manager of the UEBA team in Microsoft.
I'm Dror. I'm a senior software engineer at Microsoft Defender, UEBA team.
So, Michal, before we dive into the new capability, can you tell us about the UEBA behaviors layer and why did we build it?
Of course. So a few months ago, we introduced the UEBA behaviors layer, which is now GA, by the way. And this layer is a layer that is meant to tell us what happened in our environment, who did what to whom, and what can this mean. Each behavior is an aggregation or a sequence of events that have a security meaning that we would like to emphasize. So all behaviors are actually in one table, or actually two, behavior info and entities. So we have the full picture of what happened, but the whom and the who. And the behaviors describe what happened in the environment, provide security context in the form of MITRE mapping, provide explainability in natural language, so it is very, very easy to understand what happened, and provides any additional context that is needed for analysts to understand better what happened in the environment. Now, it's not just analysts, it also provides a MITRE perspective to the environment. So whether we would like to hunt for a specific type of threats or add this perspective to our custom detections, then it is also possible using this layer.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michal, for the explanation. But I mean, I've been working with Sentinel for a long time, right? And I know that we had UEBA already. So what is the difference between this new behaviors layer and the former or the existing UEBA anomalies that we had already?
That is a great question. So the capability we will be introducing today is actually anomalies on top of the behaviors layer. And in order to provide clarity, I will walk through each type of capability in UEBA today. So to provide this clarity, let's pull up a slide where I will be able to show you what actually happens to an event when it goes into the UEBA system. So we have the raw telemetry, the raw logs coming in, and then we have this event that is meaningful and eligible for UEBA. Then two parallel processes happen. The one is that this event, as it is, and this is, Javier, exactly what you spoke about, but UEBA, is going into the UEBA engine. It's being enriched by ISP, by geolocation, by threat intelligence, and so on. And we provide insights and anomalies on top of that raw event. So it's very, very close to the original log. And we know to show there, for example, that this event is the first time it's been seen, or it's high volume compared to the tenant, and so on. This is the UEBA, we already know. Another process is that this event is being aggregated or sequenced into meaningful behaviors. So not all events are part of meaningful behaviors, but those that are aggregated and sequenced in time windows that can be from 30 seconds to 15 minutes. Then we create a behavior explained to us that someone did something to someone else and provides explainability on why. And we will show examples of behaviors very soon. Now, on top of this behavior, we also do now the enrichments and insights and anomalies that we know so well from the raw events. So this process happens in parallel, it happens in near real time, and is added, as we will see very soon, into the behavior itself as more information on this behavior. So I hope this provides some clarity on what is the, I would say, classical UEBA, what is a behavior, and what it is, this new capability we're adding of anomalies on top of behaviors.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michal. I think this new layer, this new behaviors layer, provides a much more, aggregated view of a series of events, not right, not just a single event enriched, but a summary or aggregation of events that, as a whole, they have more meaning, right? Are more meaningful for the SOC analyst.
Yeah, so exactly. And it's not just aggregation. So, for example, if we have a case where, let's say, a file was copied somewhere into a browser and then it was deleted from its original location, this will be one behavior because this has a specific security
Right.
mean. It is mapped to MITRE and it helps the analyst and also the SOC engineer and the hunter get a much more insightful perspective on their environment. And in this case, this layer provides knowledge.
So, Dror, moving to you, can you go a bit deeper into the anomalies that were created in the behaviors layer?
Sure. So if I continue what Michal just said, so behaviors today is already quite a powerful tool because it gives you the ability to take a group of raw events and turn them into a meaningful behavior that tells you what happened there. It also maps the behavior to MITRE tactic and techniques. In general, it lets you know what happened as part of this behavior. But the thing that it doesn't tell you is this thing that just happened, is it anomalous or is it normal? So this is why we have the UEBA on top of that. And this enables us to answer two questions. The first one is, I got a behavior. Is this behavior anomalous? And we do it based on false detections, uncommon patterns, poetic intelligence that we'll get more into in the next slide. And we also answer questions such as, let's say that it is anomalous. Why is it anomalous? And for this, we've added a new column called the insight column as part of behavior info table that contain everything you need to know about what is anomalous and why is it anomalous. So in general, instead of just saying something happened, we now say something suspicious happened, and this is why it is suspicious.
Very cool. Makes total sense. So, specifically, which new insights and enrichments we have added recently?
Okay, so I typically divide this into 4 types of insights. The first of them is from the first scene family. In this case, we specify if something happened for the first time, something that have never happened before. For example, we can answer questions such as, we got a behavior. Is this the first time that I'm seeing this behavior in my organization? Or let's say that a behavior contains a country and it is linked with an entity. Is this the first time that I'm seeing these two together? So this is one thing. Another one is the uncommon patterns. In this case, we measure abnormality of each of the organizations covered using dynamic threshold. This allows us to detect cases such as, let's say that we got a spike of events. Is this usual to get this spike of events for a certain entity or in the organization? Or let's say again that we got a certain country, which is a part of a behavior. Is it common to connect to this country in the organization? So this is another thing. We also have the geo-enrichments family. So let's say that a behavior contains data about source IP. So in this case, you will automatically get geo-enrichments such as country, city, and internet service provider. These will be available as part of the additional info column in behavior info. And they're also used to calculate insights. And the last one is threat intelligence. In this case, once you have a source IP, we can check if it matches to a known threat indicator. In this case, we provide both the type of the indicator and the description. And this enables us to tell if, for example, a IP is linked with malicious activity, phishing, honeypot, things like that. So overall, we have 13 new insights and 4 new enrichments, which are available for all behaviors.
Fantastic. I believe you have some examples that we can maybe explore to see this in action and a bit more attached to a real world scenario.
Yeah, sure. So we have 3 examples. These are real life examples that we provided to our customers. The details have changed, but the examples are real. So it's really interesting to see. The first one is credential management. So let's see how does the behavior looks without the UEBA, and then we see what the UEBA adds on top of it. So credential management, we have the start time and the end time for each behavior, when did it start and when did it ended. We have the behavior type, access key credential management, And the description in human language, multiple access key operations, remove, rotate, things like that. We have the MITRE tactic and techniques mapping, and we have the account name, the one that performed the operation, and the source IP. So this is without UEBA. Now let's see what UEBA adds on top of that. So using UEBA, we can now see that we have an additional insights column. This is the UEBA insights. And if I look further into it, I can see that I have two insights. Both of them are first thing. A first thing that is related to the behavior, which is access key credential management, and the account. In other words, it's the first time that the behavior was seen for this entity. And the second one is first seen for the account in the country. In other words, it's the first time that the user is connecting from the United States. So instead of just saying that we have admin managed credential, we can now say that no, it's never seen before, and it's coming from a new origin, so it could be suspicious.
Super helpful. Let's see another one.
Sure. So the next one is anonymous X3 burst. Yes, and again, we have the start time and the end time, and this time the description is a burst of operations, anonymous storage access from a single IP. And we have the source resource, the resource that we are accessing to, as well as the source IP. And this time we also have action count. The action count specifies how many operations were performed to this storage. But just by looking at this number, I'm not able to tell if this is a normal amount of operation for this account to be performed, or maybe it's abnormal. So this is why we have UEBA. So using the UEBA layer, I now have two insights about it. The first one is the high volume insights. And I can see that we have high volume for this behavior on this IP. In other words, we have uncommon high volume of behavior for this entity. Additionally, if I go deeper and check the other insight for this IP, I can see that it is linked with phishing indicator. And from the description, I can see that the tagging of this phishing indicator is pretty strong because the IP was flagged hundreds of times in the past months. So we have the uncommon high volume of operation and the phishing activity for the IP. So instead of just saying, if I'm looking the behavior without UEBA, I can say that we have 61 anonymous S3 reds. I don't know if it's anomalous or not. This time I can say, no, it's abnormal volume, and the IP is known as phishing, so it should raise the flag.
One question on this one. That TI that is being brought from enrichments and anomalies layer, is it coming from the Microsoft internal threat intelligence, or is it coming from another place?
Yes, it comes from Microsoft Threat Intelligence, and it's pretty helpful both for this scenario and also for other UEBA scenarios.
Fantastic. All right, Dror, so let's move to the last example. And I want to stress one thing. These are real examples that come from our design partner customers that we've been working with in the early phases of this feature. So they're even more meaningful like that.
Yeah, exactly. So sure, let's move to the next one. So our last example is from the permission enumeration behavior types. So this time we had permission enumeration, and the description is permission enumerated across multiple services. We have the account name, we have this IP. Let's see what UEBA adds on top of that one. So now, if I look further into the insights, I can see that I have two insights for the same entity, which is this time it's the country. So we have two layers, and in the first one, I can see that we have a first scene for the account from the country. In other words, it's the first time that the user connected from Canada. And in the second insight, which is uncommon value, I can understand that Canada is uncommon in the organization. In other words, it's uncommon to connect to Canada from this organization. So instead of just saying that I have a routine scan, I can now know that it's coming from Canada for the first time, and it's not common to connect from Canada. So it could indicate that the account was compromised.
Fantastic. Super helpful, Dror. So one question, like I'm a customer or a partner seeing this episode right now. What do I need to do as a customer or partner to enable this in the environment and make this a reality?
So the good thing is, as long as you have behaviors, you will automatically get UEBA on top of that. It's completely automatic, and nothing else needs to be done from the customer side.
Okay. But I need to go still in the Defender portal and enable the behaviors layer, right? In
That's
the
correct.
UEBA part of the configuration, right?
Yeah, we do assume that the behavior layer is enabled and the data source are also enabled for this part.
And I would like to add something to what Dror just mentioned. So what the customer needs to have turned on is the behaviors layer in the UEBA settings. Hopefully you already have the UEBA that you know and love from previously as well. And then you get the UEBA insights and anomalies automatically. You need to make sure that the data sources, the eligible data sources, are connected. So you enable behaviors and then you connect the data sources. We currently support a set of data sources. We are adding new data sources all the time. As long as you follow our what's new in the portal or any other announcements, we keep updating on new data sources availability. But as Dror said, once everything is enabled and connected for this capability, you don't need to do anything. You get it out of the box because we know this is a very important knowledge on top of the behavior itself.
Perfect. So now that I have it enabled as a customer, what is the first thing that I need to do to start using it and benefiting from these new insights and enrichments?
So I would say that the first thing would be to fill the data, to have a look at the new table, to execute queries on top of that. So this is the one thing. Next, I would start using it as part of detection flows and investigation. And I have some examples that can help. So this slide is taken from the investigation advanced hunting section as part of our portal. And let's say that we have a SOC analyst who wants to investigate more about a certain account that he suspects that could be compromised. So before diving into the KQL, I want to show you the schema below. So this is the new schema that we refer to. And we have the insights column. And this is the column that I was talking about, that containing all the relevant information of what is anomalous and why. And you can see that this insight column is structured. It has all the relevant information, and the purpose behind it is the human reader and also agentic workflow will have everything that they need to both investigate and to perform automatic detections on top of that. So in this case, you can see that it's first seen, and you have all the entities involved as part of this insight. Additionally, we have enrichments as the geolocation and the ISP. Now let's have a look at the KQL. So we have the behavior info table, and the SOC analyst can now filter on the insight column. It can only get, for example, let's say that you want to filter on insights that contain first seen and on insights that are related to this specific account. And you can also decide that you want to project the fields that are relevant for this scenario. And this is how you get to this.
I see that you are querying the data from the advanced hunting menu and using the behavior info table. Are these behaviors also stored somewhere in log analytics, in Sentinel?
So I will take that. Thank you, Javier. So like all UEBA outputs, these logs are stored in log analytics. However, our customers can query them through advanced hunting. They don't need to do anything special. The behavior info table contains both the UEBA behaviors and if you have other Microsoft products, so Microsoft Defender for CloudX behavior or Microsoft Defender for Cloud behaviors, they're all there in the same table. So you don't have to worry about it. If you look in your log analytics, you will see a table called Sentinel Behavior Info, which actually contains those logs. But to query them in advanced hunting, you don't need to know what I just said. You just query behavior info and behavior entities.
Perfect. Super clear. Understood.
Another cool thing that I want to show you is a set of built-in functions that we generated to enable you to query the data even more easily and to make sure that you have everything you need. So we had the full group of functions on the right part of the page, but let's see in the example here. So the exact same query can now be performed using the functions. So for example, I can ask behavior info and execute the get first in behaviors function. This will filter out all the behaviors that are not first in. Then I can ask to get anomalous behaviors by value and supply the relevant account in this case, and I will get all the anomalous behaviors for this entity. And of course, we have the full info and example for each of the functions in our documentation.
Cool. Very helpful. One last question from me. Do you have an example on how to turn this behavior info information into a custom detection that I can use in my environment?
So yeah, we also have an example for detection use case. So let's say that we want to create a custom detection for the example that I showed before of an uncommon anonymous S3 burst detection. This screenshot is taken from the custom detection section in our portal. So we have the rule description, detect S3 bursts with uncommon volume and suspicious IPs. And now we can check how the detection engineer need to define the query. So how can you do it? So we have the behavior info table, and we filter only on behaviors which are anonymous S3 bursts. And we add two more filters on the insights. The first of them is uncommon value. This indicates that we have significant traffic from this behavior. And another filter is on the threat intelligence to provide only behaviors that are linked with TI data. And we can also add projections to fields that could be useful as part of the detection, as we do here in this example.
Perfect. Thank you so much, both Dror and Michal, for coming to the show and talking to us about the UEBA behaviors layer and the anomalies on top of those behaviors. Super helpful for the SOC analysts and the SOC teams to really have those insights in their environment. Thank you, everyone, for watching.